Lip Service is brought to you by C2E2, Chicago, Illinois, April 24th and 26th. Click on the banner below to reserve your tickets today. C2E2, the con the fans deserve. Hey, all right, viewers and listeners, you have reached the live taping of Lip Service. And for those of you who don't know, Lip Service is the show that talks about comics. And the people who read them, write them, love them. But the difference with us is that we here feature the independents because the major publishers already have TV, the web, and all points in between pretty much sewn up. So this is our way of giving to and back to the very same community that we're a part of. And today we have a return guest, Rob Salkowitz. Rob Salkowitz is the author who he published a book about, of all places, San Diego and comic book conventions. So Rob, welcome back to Lip Service.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you back, and right off the top, thank you very much for deciding to come back to our little soiree here. Now, when you wrote your first release book about San Diego, what was it? I read bits and pieces of it, but for those people who have probably been under the radar, what was the key points about that book?
Sure. So first of all, the book is called Comic-Con and the Business of Pop Culture. It came out in the summer of 2012, right before San Diego Comic-Con.
Right.
And what that book was looking at is how comics have gone from being kind of a fringe medium that had very light commercial impact, very light cultural impact, into becoming the center of this multi-billion-dollar global entertainment industry, and how that happened, and all of the stuff that's going on in terms of digital comics and movies being made out of comics, all of that. And it turns out that if you look at an event like San Diego Comic-Con, that's where a lot of these things are all happening. That's where the future of entertainment is sort of coming into life in real time. So in the book, I'm walking around all of the various things that go on at San Diego Comic-Con. If any of your listeners have ever been there, they know it's this sort of crazy exposition of there's comics and movies and celebrities, and there's programming and thousands of dealers and almost 200,000 people on the streets outside in San Diego. And what's going on inside all of that chaos is a lot of things that have to do with future of entertainment, future of technology and video games, future of marketing and business.
Right.
So lots of things to be learned just by looking at what's going on in comics.
And it's funny. It's amazing that you said it, because even though we're talking about San Diego, the same kind of fervor and clamor can be said about any major con, Wizard World, Fan Expo in Canada, our launching point, and some people want to say it's a phenomenon, but this movement has been quietly going on for quite some time, correct?
Yeah, so Comic-Cons have been around for last year, or just last month at the New York City Comic-Con. I was on a panel with a bunch of people, some of whom were there at the very first New York Comic-Con 50 years ago.
Right.
And they had the program from 1964, and it was in a basement, and there was 100 people there. And New York Comic-Con is another one of these gigantic shows. They got 140,000 people this year. I've actually been doing some research for the ticketing company called Eventbrite, and they're very interested in this because they've been watching the money that's going into these events. And they estimate that just in ticket sales in North America, comic, anime, and gaming conventions are something like a $600 million business, $640 million according to the estimates that they've done.
Wow.
And when you calculate out what the impact of that is, because it's always bigger than tickets, hotels and restaurants and sales, so every time there's a convention in town, it has an enormous economic impact. This could be a $4 or $5 billion industry
very easily.
Just in comics and fan conventions, which is staggering.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons why here in Chicago, Mayor Daley made the deal with the unions to bring C2E2 into Chicago and not out to the Allstate Arena like Wizard World and some of the other conventions, because apparently his number crunchers seen the same thing. $5 billion, and for a city that's hurting to fill gaps in holes, $5 billion is a nice little start for a band-aid. You know.
No, absolutely, and it puts a lot of people to work. They just did a study of the San Diego Comic-Con, and that one weekend in San Diego generates something like $170 million, and they employ 100% of the convention staff. So everybody that's laying carpet and selling food, and driving the forklifts, and all of that stuff, all those people are working and they're making overtime. It's great business for any city that is doing this kind of thing.
Okay, and then now from the economic standpoint, it sounds like it is pretty much a no-brainer. Now, from the societal aspect of it, there lies to me the kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a disconnect, or this is where the butting of the heads come to, where the outside non-pop culture still sees this as a geek type thing or something like that, to where they were just
it's getting less like that. When I wrote the book in 2012, there was still kind of a freak show aspect to it. So when the media goes to cover San Diego Comic-Con, it's all about the costumes and the crazy people. In the last year or so, I think there's been a real awareness that there's a artistic thing going on, that these shows are great for independent creators and established creators. This is where a lot of great new work is discovered at conventions. And the other thing is that the cons themselves are bringing in a different audience. So it's not, 15 years ago, going to cons back then, the audience was a lot different. Now it's much more diverse. You see a lot more women coming to shows.
Families,
younger people, and that's changed the perception, because I think a lot of the people, they may not even read comics. They're fans of, because they saw the Spider-Man movie, they saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and they want to come, or maybe they're not interested in comics at all. They're interested in video games or anime or something like that. So it's a much bigger group that's coming to these shows now.
Well, yeah. Well, but that also kind of plays into the planning of the promoters for these shows, because at one point in time, it was where everything was separate, and from my personal experience was when we were attending Fan Expo. And yes, and I'm telling you guys right now, we're coming back up there next year. So you guys get ready. That where the combining, well, they probably did their market research and said, well, hey, these people play video games. These people are into this, into a whole bunch of other things. Wouldn't it be convenient to group all that together, and everybody can get a slice of their pie and a slice of somebody else's pie at the same time?
Yeah, and that's kind of what started to happen, and you're seeing these shows that are, they started out as regional shows. When I started going to San Diego Comic-Con, it was the largest convention in the country. In 1997, they got 35,000 people. Well, now you get 35,000 people one day in C2E2 or something like that. And, shows like Salt Lake City and Seattle, where I'm from, the Emerald City Comic-Con, get 75,000, 80,000 people for what used to be sort of second-tier shows. So that's pretty remarkable. But you're also getting a lot. The thing is, there's so much going on, and there's so much money and so much interest in it that not every show has to be some gigantic thing. There's a lot of great indie shows now. There's one out here next week called Short Run Seattle, which is all small press and mini comics and stuff like that. There's SPX and a lot of other shows that you don't have to be into the whole pop culture thing. Into the art form of comics, and have a great time.
And see, and that's the I like to say the main appeal about the bigger shows now being successful. The smaller shows now have a chance to raise their bar, and and now you can get, instead of having the corporate, I say this, the local shows now have a chance to raise their bar and be less of the corporate feel of their bigger cousins.
Yeah, absolutely. And but also one of the things is the organizers need to be on their game a little bit more. I mean, every so often you hear of one of these shows where they didn't book a big enough place, or 3 times as many people showed up as they thought, or guests canceled and they don't know what to do about it. I think there was one in Rhode Island, or it's like there's been about 3 or 4 of them this year that I've heard that were really kind of disasters because the organizers were still thinking kind of small time, and it turns out that it was much bigger than that. So, fan expectations are higher because the well-run shows, people are really psyched up for them. They show up, and there's all these celebrities, and there's all this stuff to do. If you roll up to a con that's not that good,
right?
It seems worse because it's like, well, why couldn't it be as good as C2E2?
Right, or something like that. Well, but then at the same time, if for any promoter, especially one starting out, or you're still trying to feel your way through, I mean, it's still a huge risk, and with no guarantee. So I mean, in this case, doesn't erring on the side of caution be a safer move instead of just trying to go all out and then have a smaller crowd and less return?
Yeah, I mean, even whatever size show you're doing, just make sure that you have room for all the people that you sold tickets to. That if your guests don't show up, and those are people that fans are coming to see, that you have some way to refund their money or make good on that somehow. Because a lot of the complaints are that, and then also if you're inviting guests, kind of is common sense, but pay them what you say you're going to pay them.
Right.
Because bad reputation travels fast in the business, and
yes, it does.
If you get a reputation for running a slipshod show and not treating your guests right, not treating your fans right, there's too much competition out there right now that nobody's going to deal with you anymore.
Well, yeah, and that is also true. There's to me where a whole there's one particular con that I know that has dealt with. I have never heard anybody say anything good about. I'm not going to mention who they are, but they're in a certain city in Michigan, and I've never heard anything really coming out of it that would want you to be part of that particular show.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. And I think one of the other reasons why I would think Wizard World here in Chicago has gone on to decline. It's because of what the moves that they made guest wise over the last couple of years, and it became kind of where instead of talking about the overall aspect about comics, they went pretty much hokey and shtick.
Yeah, and they're big sort of pop culture shows. I mean, if you're into professional wrestling, or you want to see like Playboy Playmate of the Month for 1891 or something like that, those are shows you can go and do that.
Right.
Maybe get a tattoo. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on at Wizard World that has only marginal to do with comics. But
right.
That's okay. They seem to be doing all right. And one thing about Wizard is they are expanding their slate, so they're going to second and third tier cities. They were in like Madison, Wisconsin, they're in Nashville, and they're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, places like that, where the fans at those places, they don't have a show in their own town.
Right.
They have to get in the car and drive 200 or 300 miles to go to a decent event, and now they have one that comes to their own city. So that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, that it is, and because funny you should mention that, because I know earlier this year, Wizard World first did their first con in St. Louis, and I had talked to a few colleagues that went down there and asked them, well, how was it? And they said they had a great time, and I think for St. Louis, that's their first real major big name con that they've had in their period, So it's a chance to where a big name can get into these smaller markets, and at the same time, would you say that, and also in some instances, it kind of slams the lid on the smaller local people who may want to already have a con in those exact same cities now that the bigger names are trying to get into?
There's some, Blizzard has a reputation for moving in and trying to close out some of those smaller shows or compete directly with them or have something like the following weekend or something like that. The bottom line is that there's a lot of money and a lot of interest in this, and it depends on how many shows your market can sustain. Because if people show up and have a good time and your exhibitors show up and can make some money, then it's all good.
Right.
And it's that last point that's kind of interesting, because there's a lot of discussion right now that the new audience is coming into shows. Before, 10 or 15 years ago, most exhibitors at comic and fan conventions were like back issue dealers, people selling artwork and that sort of stuff. And now you go to these shows and there's a lot of like craft items, there's a lot of sort of tchotchkes and t-shirts and autographs and publisher exclusives. And when a publisher is there and they say, we have an exclusive, you can only get this cover at this convention or something like that.
Right.
There's only so much money that fans have to spend, and they're like, well, I want that, and it crowds out to other dealers.
Right.
So, we're kind of on borrowed time to see, a lot of the old kind of exhibitors that come to these shows, and artists in particular, show up and maybe can't the people who come to know who are anymore. All the young people who are watching the movies don't necessarily read the comics. They don't know who some of these guys are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a difficult transition, because with the study that we did some survey research, and we found out people are spending a lot of money at conventions. They're just spending stuff.
Right. Well, then, which kind of speaks of research, and I'm about to press this because I know you probably see articles in the certain kind of attendees wanting to say that the cosplayers are driving away their business, or they can't make money because of the cosplayers. So, what if you have seen any research that substantiates that?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry, I was getting some interference on the line.
Okay, no problem. I don't know if you've seen the rumblings from certain kind of these blaming cosplayers for the role of why they can't make any sales or they can't push their stuff. As you've done over the last couple of years, seen anything that substantiates these people's claims?
I'm sorry, I'm really having some trouble with the signal here. It's getting all chopped up.
Okay.
I don't know if that's on your end or on mine. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can hear. That's funny. Now I can hear you fine. But when you were asking the question, that's when it was getting all messed up.
Okay. Well, let me. I'll talk a little more directly into the microphone.
Oh, that works.
Okay. Are the cosplayers creating more of a problem for dealers and, more importantly, the people in Artist Alley to push their goods?
So that's one of the big questions, and that's actually some of our survey data got to that, because a lot, if you ask exhibitors at the shows, they'll say, oh, all of these people are coming to like take pictures of each other in costume, and they're using the artists and the other exhibitors as kind of backdrops to their selfies. And this is really the experience of a lot of people that come to these shows. There was a piece, a friend of mine, the artist, and he's making a lot of shows. They're in Chicago.
Okay.
And she had a column who's sort of questioning, is this a sustainable model because of this? The research that we did with that shows that the cosplayers actually spend just as much money as anybody else at shows, and that they're coming to the shows for the same reason. They want to see the friends, and they want to buy stuff they like. That's the top responses. So I think it's a question of what are they spending their money on, not whether they're spending or not.
Okay.
Cosplayers are good for the convention economy in a lot of ways.
Right.
But they may not be good for a particular kind of exhibitor. And those kind of exhibitors should probably think about sticking to collector shows or to shows in the crowd. Those people are
okay. Well, and that's fair enough because and because my personal take is when we went to when we were attending Fan Expo, the costumes that we saw up there for some of the cosplayers here to shame. I mean, very intricate, and yeah, they were drawing a crowd, but at the same time, if you are, I'm putting the onus on the attender and the person behind that table. If you have some good stuff, it's your job. Would you agree? It is your job to make your best presentation.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also your job to understand where you are at.
Right.
And it's a different show if it's like a science fiction oriented show that's going to get, frankly, an older, more male audience versus like a pop culture show like Kamikaze,
right,
which is marketed to young people, and it's marketed and it's about cosplay and stuff like that. And it's like that might not be the right place for you to exhibit. So yeah, I mean, some of it definitely sits on the exhibitor side.
Okay.
Because cosplayers, as I said in the thing I wrote, they're just consumers in disguise. They're there to spend money with everybody else.
Okay. Okay. When you said I could just hear the Transformers things. Consumers, buyers in disguise. Oh yeah. I mean, I can see that. And now from I want to kind of shift gears here, because if all this money is going into the conventions and everything, now should the major publishers even be crying, or maybe I should say maybe one certain distributor should not be crying the blues about stuff is not, their readership is down, because somewhere out there those books that may be sitting up on somebody's shelf are being moved at these conventions. So it's Diamond's grousing about the market being down, all smoke and mirrors.
Well, there's a couple of different things going on. So we talked about the convention economy being maybe $5 or $6 billion
right.
to add everything up in terms of the economic impact.
Right.
The whole comics publishing industry in the United States is something around $800 million.
Okay.
So it's a lot less. And that's everything. That's periodicals like Comic Book Supply at the store, through the direct market. If you can find comics on the newsstand anymore, digital comics and
right.
graphic novels that are sold in bookstores. All of that added up together is roughly around $800 million.
Okay.
So the publishing side of the business is a different business. And then DC and Marvel, for them, the publishing is almost the afterthought. Like
right.
the real money is in licensing, so merchandising, T-shirts, toys, all of that stuff.
Right.
That's $20, $30 billion. And if you add Disney in, it's even more than that.
Right.
So for them, the publishing the comics is just keeping interest alive among a certain fan audience.
Okay.
And the real money is in
the third party
that are not necessarily reading the book.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of a problem, and it is possible. I mean, from the numbers that I've seen, that actually comic publishing is doing okay right now.
Now,
and certain books are doing better than others.
Right.
And like this week in the list, Ms. Marvel is doing really well, for example.
Right.
And that's a really interesting book, because that's a book that has taken a big chance on expanding the audience.
Right.
Your listeners familiar with that book?
If they're not, I'll give them a brief synopsis, because Ms. Marvel was the former Avenger, and if I'm not mistaken, they took a total revamp of the character, and I know that when I read it, when I first heard them changing her into of Middle Eastern descent, I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, she's a teenage Pakistani American girl from New Jersey, and it's really rooted in her life and everything. And she's a superhero, of course, as well.
Right.
And it's written by this very interesting writer named Willow Wilson. understanding of that culture,
right,
and everything. So, and it's a really an interesting book on a number of levels. It's a fun read, and it's really well drawn. I mean, it's well done, but it's an interesting thing because it's broadening the idea of what superheroes can be.
and right.
It lets a lot more people see themselves in that picture,
Mm-hmm.
and it's doing well commercially too. It's selling a lot of copies. So
right.
That's kind of encouraging.
And now you kind of brought to another subject where that I would love for your research to kind of expand on, because one of the things that I have seen, and I know you have seen too, is the revamping of characters into more of a diverse background, and some characters have met with a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see if, and you brought up the point where just like with Miss Marvel, other people can see themselves in her because they can say, well, I'm Pakistani American. So and I haven't heard much of anybody back bashing that change. So shouldn't the publishing companies now, maybe instead of trying to revamp what already is, and to maybe open their doors to a broader horizon and different characters?
Well, see, that's the benefit of this, because almost everybody that ends up working professionally in comics at some point in their life was a comic fan.
Right.
And to become a fan, you need to have something that you're a fan of. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of for the last 10 years, there's been more women reading comics, and consequently more girls grow up into young women that are drawing comics and
Mm-hmm.
writing comics, and that broadens the talent pool. And the same in any measure of diversity that you want, whether it's the gender or ethnicity or whatever,
right,
that's going to work. So if you have comics out there that appeal to more people, you're making more fans, and in the long run, you're going to make more professionals, and it's going to make the industry itself more diverse.
right.
Because that's been a huge problem. I mean, the industry is, basically mostly a bunch of white guys, frankly, and that doesn't help the the kind of conversations that go on editorially about what they should be doing with their characters.
True, but
Marvel is taking a pretty good chance with in terms of broadening their
right,
their base of characters, and hopefully that's going to pay off for them.
Well, it is. But the funny part about it is the backlash of all this is not coming from the creative end; it's coming from the readers' end. So to me, on the one hand, we're seeing all this diversity, true enough, but then going to the cons and everything else, is one number, but then the people who seem to be reading, and these seem to be the exact same people Diamond is looking at, shows another number. So which one is the right number?
Well, I mean, the people coming into conventions are different than the people that are reading the comics. And
Okay.
furthermore, the people that are reading comics in comic stores are slightly different than the people that are, say, getting their comics digitally on Comixology,
Right. Mm-hmm.
or somewhere like that, where you don't have to go into a comic store to do that.
Right.
So, there's a bunch of different audiences. I wrote a piece last week. So I wrote for ICV2, which is the trade publication for the comics and fan culture industry.
Uh-huh.
And are your listeners familiar with Gamergate? Have you talked about that at all?
No. I did. For me, with the show and everything, with independence and everything, I try to keep it strictly with the independents. But if our listeners and viewers are true fans of the genre, we're not the only source that they're getting the information from. So I've heard of Gamersgate, and I'm quite certain.
I mean, it's this thing that's going on online right now, and it started with a bunch of guys that were kind of upset at the way games were being covered in the press, but
Right.
it turned into this real. It became a real identity issue. It became like that. There's this core identity of gamers that was being threatened by women and people of color and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
and it became this sort of cultural reaction against. We don't want games about this stuff. We want just games that are about games. And there's the same. I think there's that same impulse on the comic side
Uh-huh.
when the certain kind of fan is going to look at, you know, Sam Wilson becoming Captain America, and they're going to say, why are they messing with my character? Like, this is a character I identify with, and this has gone too far. You know, this is all about political correctness. It's all about getting the media to pay attention. It's got nothing to do with the story.
Right.
And you would think anybody with common sense in their head could say, look, you know, expanding the audience is a good idea.
Right.
Expanding the diversity of superheroes is a good idea.
Right.
You can read your old Captain America comics if you want, and then they're the same as they've ever been.
Right.
You know, there's no harm in trying a new thing.
Right.
But you know, like, these people get all worked up about this stuff.
Yes.
And I think it's not about the characters, it's about them. It's about their identity and their sort of loss of privilege over whether they control that storyline anymore.
Right.
And that is not, unfortunately, it's not only in comics and games, you know, it's all over the place.
Well, yeah.
It's a broader cultural stuff.
Right. So it you know, and which kind of brings up, you know, one of these days I would love to have a panel on that very subject, you know, because right, you hit the conundrum right on the head. Especially for the digital and publishing, if you want to get your book out there and have the numbers that you want, you have to say, I want as many people as possible to read my story, which means that you cannot have a myopic view of your market.
Right.
You know, but you know, and that goes for the you know, in order to have a strong base, you kind of have to kind of destroy the old-fashioned core of what is or was. You know.
Well, yeah, and for independent publishers, it's actually probably a little easier because the big, you know, Marvel and DC, they got to be all things to all people.
Right.
They're not just for fans anymore. They're the people that are behind these giant movies and everything like that. The smaller publisher can say, I don't want the whole audience. I just want the people that are interested in this or that. And you can specialize. You can find the right talent to tell the kind of stories that you want to tell.
Right.
And then it's just a matter of just making sure that you're reaching the people that you want to reach.
Right.
And then those people get excited enough about it, and they start telling everybody else, and then you've got a hit on your hands. Okay.
Well, that yeah, and then from because as an independent publisher, you know, how can an independent publisher focus in on being selective when basically you see what the bigger boys are doing, and you know, and that model is what's working, and especially if you want to achieve that, get at least get close to that level.
Well, I mean, it's working for them. I mean, you know, like, there's a lot of problems with that model as well. But the thing is, if you look what's going on right now, and there's all of this attention to comics and conventions and all this craziness that's going on, the next thing that happens is that people sort of take a step back from that, and they say, oh, you know, I don't want to go to something where there's, you know, 1 million people. I want to go to a smaller show to reflect my interest. And I think the next thing that's going to happen in comic culture is there's going to be more specialization. There's going to be, you know, I'm only interested in going to a small press show and not to a, you know, and those are places where you can exhibit and you can get, you know, because you're the amount of business you have to be successful is less. You know,
right.
You have to keep a roof over your head for people.
Right. True. That
you know, and you distribute digitally, and you've got that. You know, you don't have to worry about printing costs and distribution and that sort of thing. You know, Comixology, Submit, and Mayfire, and some of these other digital platforms that let you post your own stuff and sell it through their storefront.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, and for us independents, you know, maybe not so much for you know, Comixology, because you know, I've heard a little, I've been part of their horror story. You know, to me, they're becoming more the digital version of Diamond, pretty much. But thank goodness that unlike Diamond, they don't have a monopoly. They just have a grand lion share, of what's going
Well,
on.
they're pretty close to a monopoly.
Yeah, yeah,
Some estimates is that they have something like 90% of the digital comics sold in
yeah,
comiXology. And then they get bought by Amazon, which is kind of a problem.
yeah.
That's something that I actually predicted in my book. So the book came out, I was writing the book in 2011, and there was still a lot of uncertainty about what would happen in digital comics. And I said, these guys are going to get bought, and in fact, that ended up happening. But I have a piece coming out tomorrow in Publishers Weekly that talks about what the digital landscape looks like now, and the opportunities both for independent creators and for other publishers who don't want to deal with them.
Okay. And well, you know what? I'm going to be and is that going to be online?
It'll eventually be online. It's going to be in the print publication, and then it'll probably be online in another week or so.
Okay.
I think they want to give their print subscribers first look at it.
Okay. Oh well. As soon as it comes, if I don't snag the Publishers Weekly during this coming week, I am definitely going to be looking at the at the print because I find myself too that Amazon will snatch them up, and then the other funny part about it is we finally cracked the Amazon nut and got our stuff within Amazon. So now I'm gonna put the bug in Amazon's ears. Like, well, if I'm over here and here, how come I can't get over there? And
that's interesting because they're starting to consolidate that. So your stuff is on Amazon.
Yeah,
it's in the Amazon store, but it's not in comiXology.
Exactly.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Very interesting. And if you're listening, Amazon, fix it. Because it took us a little bit of going around in circles, but we're finally got our stuff listed in Amazon, and then a couple of months later, boom, here is them. Not so, but much like a year later, now all of a sudden they snapped up comiXology, and I'm like, well, ain't this a coinkydink? And now I'm saying to myself, well, now that they got and I'm quite certain we're not the only ones in the situation. So if we're here, we should be over there. Automatic, there should be no ifs, ands, or buts, or whatever. Make it happen.
I suspect that will probably happen sooner rather than later. I know that whenever a company gets bought, it takes a while for stuff to settle down and for both sides of the company to be talking the same language.
Oh yeah.
One thing I do know is that I know that a lot of people have sort of mixed experiences with the comiXology MIP program.
Right.
I do know that fundamentally they are really genuinely committed to getting independent work out there. They really are. That the heart's in the right place, and sometimes the execution of that doesn't always follow through. But I don't think that there's a strategy to say, oh, we're going to keep certain stuff out.
Right.
As a matter of principle, it's just it takes a while for it to
sift through
get into their system, and that kind of thing. So if you've got if you've got a good book and you've got an audience that you want to reach, you don't see why. I would be surprised if you don't find a way to solve that problem.
Right. So Rob, where do you see all this lunacy actually going? How long can people ride this pony before it breaks a leg or you gotta finally put it to sleep?
Well, so in the book, I have a couple of different scenarios of what the future looks like. And right now we're in the scenario that I call endless summer, which is just one thing after another, bigger and bigger movies. And if you look at, DC and Marvel announced their slate of movies through 2020, and they have, 50 movies on the docket to be produced. And I'm a huge fan. I love this stuff. And when I was a kid, I was like, this is what I dreamed of: is a great convention every weekend, and all of this great stuff in print and nice editions and big budget movies. And now I'm like, maybe they need to back off a little on this. Maybe it's a little too much. And I think a lot of people are probably going to start feeling that way. And if three or four of these movies fail one after another, I think there's going to be a very big reassessment of the value of this, because popular culture moves on. It doesn't stay in the same place.
True.
And our generation is, is getting its entertainment out of comics and sort of thing. And maybe, and it seems like popular music is a little less interest 10 or 15 years ago. And that's the kind of stuff that comes in waves. And I can guarantee you that as soon as the money goes away, that these guys are going to start looking in another direction. And, comics and this whole area of the culture could be back to being a niche, and sort of nerd culture again. So to me, that's a definite possibility. And even though everything is, all the arrows are pointing up right now, it's what I call peak geek.
Right.
When pop culture, when comics culture has taken over pop culture.
Yeah.
And it's like enjoy it while it lasts, but nothing lasts forever. And so we'll have to see.
Yeah, we will. Now, from your experience and everything, what would be some sage advice for when that bubble bursts? Because in for a penny, in for a pound. So when the bubble does burst, what should one do? Should they retool, reform to form Voltron, or no? That's no. After the smoke clears, will there still be an audience?
So if you are building your audience because the people that are buying your stuff and reading your stuff love what you're doing, love your stories, love your characters, then you can survive anything, because those are the people that are going to be with you through thick and thin.
Right.
The problem is when these things get hyped up and people get on board just because it seems like the thing to do.
Right.
And you get too much surface area of people that are just, like there's a lot of people that come to San Diego Comic-Con now just because they've heard it's cool.
Right.
Not because they have any interest in what's going on there, but it's like that's where everybody goes, so I'm going to go there too.
Right.
And those are the first people when it goes. But for independent people, if you stay true to your voice and your story and your characters, and you cultivate your audience and make sure that they, that they're following what you're doing, then you probably don't have to worry that much, because the art form and the storytelling form of comics is immortal.
Okay.
People are always going to want to tell their stories this way, and people are always going to want to read about them this way.
Right.
This and everything else is just noise. So if you focus on that part of it, I think it's at least in theory, you'll be okay.
Right.
There's a lot of good stuff that gets pulled down under for no reason, but some of that stuff is just beyond your control.
That is also true. So aside from the Publisher's Weekly piece, what else have you been writing about?
Yeah, I've been writing. It's mostly about this comic culture stuff. I teach at the University of Washington now, so every spring I teach a class on comics as communications media. That's kind of fun, and I'm trying to put together a series of panels at Emerald City Comic Con out here in Seattle. From that's actually a pretty good show, and we're trying to get some. We had some great guests last year.
Yeah.
Trying to build up a list of that this time.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah.
Still trying to think about what the next book is going to be. I don't want to write anything that's not as good as the last thing I did.
Oh yeah. With you just writing about the Comic Cons and everything else. I mean, right now, if for anybody who wants to get into this business, I suggest you grab that book, and I intend to grab that book because to me, there's a lot of good resources and a lot of good information that can be gleaned out of your book.
Well, thank you so much. The book is called Comic-Con and the Business of Pop Culture. You can find it in Amazon, and then also if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at Rob Salk, ROBSALK.
Well, which I do.
And I usually tweet about other stuff that I'm doing and other stuff that I kind of like what's going on in the comic world.
Oh, and I do, and the one thing, independents, my colleagues, He said business. It is a business. Okay. Anybody who even professional artists say, I'm producing art. Yes, but you're still a businessman. That title does not. That title goes with you no matter what. Remember that. And so, folks, we have been talking with Rob Salkowitz. To me, he is one of the premier people you need to talk to, you need to listen to and read from, if you really want to get an understanding about the marketing and in this industry and in this business. He'll have an article coming out in print for Publishers Weekly, and if I can ever get a chance to get up there to Emerald City, I want to meet you face to face.
We'd love to see you up here someday.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks again for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and wishing you and your audience the best.
Okay. And folks, we have been talking to Rob Salkowitz, a very, very, very important person you need to follow up on. And what I'm going to do is I have another guest right behind here in about 15 minutes. So if you guys can put up with me yakking, or I can get a hold of him early, we can get that show started here. So Rob, thank you so much, and I will follow up with you on Facebook in a few moments.
Great, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye. Okay, so that's one down. And so for once, people, you guys are going to get a bonus, okay? And actually, I should say that you're getting this bonus because we were at the TCS Con in Orland Park. Leo, thank you so much. And Doc, thank you for giving us the information for us to get out there and reach out to and connect with some good folk. We got some leads on some future cons that we're planning to be attending. One of them is going to be DanCon, hopefully in December, and we're actually looking at in March. My wife met a nice guy, cop from Hammond, Tom. He was telling us about his FOCon. We won't be able to make the one next weekend, but he said he has our card. Tom, please follow up with us. Let us know when the next couple of sets are coming. If there are any tables, let us know. We're definitely going to try to be there. Did a couple of interviews, which you will see later on for content with lip service. So stay tuned for that. So this little extra stuff here is my makeup because we wanted to try to do a live thingy at the show, and due to technical issues, i.e. batteries running low, that got scrapped. So I'm going to try to contact our guest, Sam.
This portion was brought to you by C2E2, coming up in April 24th to the 26th in Chicago, McCormick Place North Building. You can get your tickets today. Click on the link below or copy and paste into your web browser.
Oh, Captain Eric, I loved you so much, but you killed me. Why?
So from here, I'm going to go straight into a rant, which we call Kira, keeping it real always, because that's exactly what we do. And from here, I'm going to go off topic. I'm not going to talk about comics, although it would be very simple. I leave the X-Men debate and the diversity issues to those people, to those people who are narrow-minded and having a tizzy over it. It's a story. It's fiction. Your world does not end just because a certain character is of a different color. And to me, that is the premise behind it is exactly why Hitler ran amok in World War II. It is the reason why the Ku Klux Klan run ran is has run and is still running amok. They just gone underground. Period. It is the same premise why right now you have a political party fear mongering to get a president out of office just because the color of his skin. It's not about the politics, because if to be perfectly honest with you, if President Obama was white, doing what he's doing, you wouldn't get half the backlash you're getting from the Republicans now. Plain and simple. And I dare any one of them to come on lip service and debate. Or better yet, you know what? Invite me to Congress. I'll let you have it, both barrels. But I digress. The one thing I wanted to go kidder on is my wife and I were talking earlier today about healthy eating and how everybody's going, I want organic, I want organic, I want organic, I don't want anything genetically modified. And that's my main focus right about now. Over in Europe, and it's slowly creeping in here, where everybody's talking about everything. They want everything organic and not genetically modified. Okay, I can understand the thing about the pesticides. Fair enough. Okay, most of those chemicals have not been tested and everything. At the same time, though, if you know it has pesticides, hello, what's wrong with you actually washing off your food? People do it all the time. It's not going to kill you. You rinse it off real good. There goes the soap and the chemicals. Also, if you're that hypochondriac, boiling also works. It's not that hard, people. If you want the convenience with, you want to have your cake and eat it too. No, you're actually going to have to do some work. Furthermore, the only reason why now everybody's getting on this healthy kick is because businesses have found a way to make it marketable, to make more money off it than what it's worth. You talk about you want your organic food. Hello, go to Home Depot, go to a house and garden, get some seeds, get off your butt, plant, water, take care of it. You reap what you sow, organic, and all for $1.49, and you can have enough to last you all year, versus paying $2 a pound, and you can have all that you need right off the top. And guess what? You'll save more, and you know exactly where it's coming from, and it'll be pure organic. What's so effing hard about that, people? Not that hard. Now, going to this now going everybody talk about, I don't want genetically modified organisms. Okay. Agriculture 101 here. Most of your stuff that you're eating now, produce-wise, is genetically modified. Guess because hello, tangerine cross pollen. Actually, that's cross pollinization. There's the word. Your blue rose. Man has been genetically modifying stuff since dirt. and you just now getting all in a tizzy because now all of a sudden a scientist is actually doing what a farmer has been doing for the longest. But now all of a sudden, because now he's got goggles and this that you're going with some DNA. Now you want to be in the tizzy? You're 2 steps behind, people. Get off your high horse and use a little logic. Your blue rose, this wasn't just a blue rose. It was genetically modified by somebody literally taking pollen and putting it here, 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 and here, and redoing it and redoing it and redoing it to get to get the results that they wanted. Same thing for dog breeds. So and birds and stuff like that. That half of you sit up here and pay a pretty penny for, and you want to sit up here and preach about you don't want genetically modified whatever. Thou art hypocrite. Plain and simple. And if you don't believe me, ask a farmer. Ask a farmer in the early days before they actually had all this scientific mumbo jumbo, what they did in order to get the best to get the broccoli with the tightest head, or to get the biggest pumpkins, or anything that a farmer wanted to produce. Ask them how they used to do it. So from here, you want to talk about genetically modified, and you want to go off the deep end. Then you might as well not eat, not do this or anything, because it's been there and it's going to be there. It's just now they're being very direct with it, and having you talk about you don't know if it's safe. You've been eating genetically modified food for every man's been doing that for generations. The only thing back before mass production is the steroids and everything else. Now, to me, those are the things that should be tested, and which is probably has led to, especially over here, especially for those of descent, being bigger, stronger, faster than most of their counterparts. Because first of all, we were bred that way, to be perfectly honest with you. And Jimmy the Greek, God rest your soul, thank you for telling the truth. And everybody every minority was getting an uproar talking about the man was being racist. The man told the truth. He may have been bombed out of his doggone glory, but the man told the truth. And America, once again, couldn't handle it. First off. And until certain people in certain political parties, first of all, accept that and really want to make reparations for it, they're talking both. They can't say nothing. And then certain other Republicans in certain areas want to rewrite history, saying that AP history is not being patriotic enough. First off, history has nothing to do about being patriotic. History should be telling the truth, be it good, be it bad. And just because you don't feel, and just because you're squeamish about seeing the bad side about America, and it's been there, above the board. And the thing of it all is, what they're talking about is on the tip of the iceberg. What about the stuff that's underneath the table? Now, not patriotic enough. Get out of here. History is not about being patriotic. History is about telling the truth and chronicalizing the truth. So that way, be it good, be it bad, people can learn from it and evolve. Okay, and this is one thing for people of this descent talking about history as it is now. His story. And with these and if these Republicans get their way, that's exactly what it's going to be. Their story, their way. And it all goes back to the same way to what Hitler wanted to do back in World War II. He wanted it his way, his story. Y'all better wake up. And so, if you have commentary about this, hey, drop it down there, and I will reply. This has been Kira. And once again, Kira has been brought to you, and all this is being sponsored by C2E2. Coming up in April, right here in Chicago, April 24th and 26th, McCormick Center, North Building. Once again, making a return, former Mr. Marvel Comics himself, Stan Lee. Excelsior! And along the way, I would suggest that somewhere that I'll have the little the link down there for C2E2. Tune in here, because hopefully very soon I will actually have somebody from C2E2 to hopefully give us a little spoiler. Yeah, spoilers for the upcoming show. And and hopefully I can get an up-to-date guest list about who's going to be there and what events are going to be hopping off during that time. So tune in here, like and subscribe what we're doing. Support us. So once again, you like us, like and subscribe. And better yet, tell your friends. Tell the people within your circle. And don't be afraid. If you like us, also, I have no qualms about it. Post the show on your Facebook page. Post it all over your social media stuff. Say, hey, look what's going on. Look at this dude making a fool out of himself. I don't care. I like the views. Okay, so like and support us. Follow up with us, and we'll keep this all going. So from here, who knows? Maybe I'll have a book review, or maybe I will have a clip to tell you what's coming up next. But right now, here are a few words from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
Lip Service is brought to you by C2E2, Chicago, Illinois, April 24th and 26th. Click on the banner below to reserve your tickets today. C2E2, the con the fans deserve. This book is rated for readers 17 and older. The Lucky Seven killed her husband. Now Serena Park as Serenade goes for justice. Her weapon, a super deadly poison of her own design.
They must pay. The bastards must pay.
The bodies start falling now.
They have to pay. Those bastards.
Serenade number 11, available now at the www.kissmecomics.com website, or get the app at Google Play or on iTunes.